This meeting is
Dennis?
being recorded.
Ladies and gentlemen, good night. Thank you for being here. Um, this year, we decided to focus a lot on our personal journeys. And last year, Dave Groh started it off and was followed by Peter Holder. And tonight, Roger de Pisa is going to continue that theme. However, his journey is so exciting and so long that he's presenting part one tonight and will come back with future parts over the course of the upcoming years. So, Roger, we are looking forward to an exciting presentation tonight, and thank you for sharing part of your life's journey with us, with a focus on your early years in IT, not only in Trinidad, but in other countries around the globe. Roger?
Thank you, Dennis. You know, fellas, sometimes it felt like if I was living on the front line, which is the subtitle of this presentation. And as Dennis noted, it's in two parts, okay, because I was trying to put all of it together and it's a lot, okay? So I kind of went up to about 1999, okay? And then later on, actually 1997, the next part will be from 1997 to today. So what it is I want to do to start off this presentation, I want to play a little song for you that sort of describes the whole experience, okay? The song is called Living on the Front Line, from which the title comes. So here we go.
That Eddie Grant.
Yeah.
DP, if we're supposed to have audio, it's not coming through.
Okay, it's not coming through. Okay, so let me just restart with the share. Okay, and this time I will share my song. So here we go.
broke up my brain. Oh, mama, mama, you got me living on the front line. Oh, mama, mama, you got me living on the front line. Whoa, I say yeah, yeah, whoa, yeah. Whoa, I say yeah, yeah, whoa, yeah. Oh, mama, mama, whoa, mama, they got me living on the front line, living on the front line. They got me living on the front line. They got me living on the front line. They got me.
Okay, I find this song particularly apt for this presentation because the first objective of this presentation is me, I go talk about what I see. You understand? Through all the various experiences. Okay, we've talked about the people, the places, and I'll give you some observations. We also try to tie that into how information technology has impacted not only my life, but the life of pretty much everybody else, especially in developing countries. And lastly, I want to add in some, the lessons that I had learned from doing this job, some lessons that I had learned along the way in these various places. So these are the 4 primary places that I've basically done my work in. And of course, here where I am, but that comes after in the second part. So a question I ask my students all the time, what is an information system? What are information systems? Anybody could venture a guess. I know all of you guys know, but you don't have to be like my students and be quiet at this point. Venture an answer. It's not that hard, gentlemen.
I would say some methodology or protocol whereby you can obtain data about a certain topic or technology or whatever you're interested in.
Interesting.
I would add to what Dave was saying and say, the collection of that information or that data and the dissemination of that information or data to various parties.
Okay, anybody else? Watson, perhaps you have a thought on this?
Putting me on this.
Yeah, I'm putting you on the spot. I don't want to put Linus on the spot just yet. That coming later.
Watson, you could feel free to defer.
All right, okay.
Well,
all right, okay.
I mean, in addition to what's already been said, it has to be something that's easily communicable among whoever, persons of interest.
Okay.
And so let me add, DB. There are people who are on this call who are in the field who can respond and get it wrong. So I want them boys to put themselves under too much pressure. Since I am not in the field, I will add that I think information systems have something to do with technology and this digital era that we in, moving away from what we grew up with, which was the analog era. So it has some kind of electronics aspect to organize the data and thing that these boys collecting and disseminating. And the word system now, I think that has to do with the organization of that.
Excellent. That's a bang on kind of description you gave there, Dennis.
And I want to add, maybe based on what I'm just hearing, maybe it has some feedback loop into it, so you could access and then respond accordingly.
Well, a colleague of mine who wrote a textbook a long time ago, had come up with this definition that I thought was very succinct in terms of what an information system is. He says that information systems are a combination of hardware, software, and telecommunications networks that people build and use to collect, create, and distribute useful data. And it's typically done in an organizational setting. Okay? And then he drew this schematic here, okay, to describe what an information system is. But from my perspective, you see what's in red here is the most important component, right? The other things like hardware, software even, and telecommunication networks are just nuts and bolts. You see, right? We're doing this because of people, right? To make what it is they're doing better and more efficient. Yeah. Okay, so
before you go on, DP,
yeah.
And now that I'm looking at this, and because of the last statement I made, I wonder why those arrows didn't have like a two-ended tip, like, because I think it's important that you have the information system, you have everything, but I think there needs to be some sort of two-way system in that, I don't know.
Yeah, and Dave, let me try and answer that. This diagram so old that was before two-way communication was seen as important as.
Yeah.
So they were focusing on what is rather than how they interact, right? So
actually, there's something called old IT, which is like TV and radio. You cannot chat with, cannot carry on a two-way conversation with your TV, unless, of course, you're crazy. Yes. Okay. All right. So where did all of this thing begin? Okay, back in UWI. And you guys know some of these things, right? So in 1978, the University of the West Indies started a fairly new program in computer science. Okay. And it was offered through the math department in the Faculty of Natural Sciences. Okay, and you see here the Faculty of Natural Sciences. I know Dennis may have passed this way many a time, right?
yeah, DP, what I want to know is where are the Jamaican girls who was in the swimming pool?
Well, this was probably on a Sunday morning. I don't know. So in 1978, when we left school, I moved straight from school into UWI. So I was in the second batch of students who actually started this computer science program. They had, in fact, they only had about 2 or 3 people in the previous year. All right. Anyways, so whilst I was there, I was doing a double major in both maths and computer science. Okay. And of course, UWI was a struggle, right? Because it was really the first time, I guess, I and many of you were away from home. Okay. And money was not easy. I had a budget of $20 a week. Okay. And that had to cover transportation from Mount Lambert to St. Augustine and to San Fernando on a weekend. It had to cover food, right? Which on most days was bread and cheese. Occasionally, I'd have a hamburger from the cafe and some soft drink, and that was lunch. Okay. Fortunately for me, I lived in Mount Lambert with a lady, Mrs. Critchlow, and her family, her husband, and an old lady. And, she used to make me breakfast and dinner. So, so that helped big time. All right. So, this Austin is the library, UWI library. Okay, this up here. Okay, and this here is behind the library. The grounds, I don't know if you know UWI at all, but the grounds are very, what should I say, open, lots of space. Okay, this here is, the pathway behind natural sciences, between natural sciences and agri, This here is the admin building, okay? And this here is, the pathway to, behind the library as you walk, you could get to economics and social sciences and so on the other side.
This is a really beautiful campus, man.
It is.
Wow.
It actually
Yeah.
is a very nice space,
Yeah.
actually. Right? It's a very comfortable space, especially if you're a student. You could just hang out in this space here, which students do all the time, and relax and read a book or study or whatever, prepare for your exams or whatever on a nice day, and they have several of these salmon trees around the place. Okay. So that was my initiation into the information technology story. Now, back in those days, we still use punch cards. That was the technology of the time. Okay, we used to develop programs, and we had these stacks of paper that look like this here. Okay, this right. So you write a computer program, also, and you walk around with this box of cards. Okay, we had an ICL 1900 computer, which is that. Okay, there was no screens, there was no nothing like that. You had to put these cards in a card hopper, yes, and then it would run it and print out what is on the card, and you get it on that big sheet there, and you had to check for errors and so on. And every mistake you made, you had to change the card. Okay, now the thing is, we had great professors. Okay, great teachers. I had great teachers. Kali Charan, who died recently, one of the best. It's a pity that Gobin isn't here. Is he here? Because we had spoken when he died recently. He died a few months ago. Just suddenly. He was 67 or something like that. Okay, right? Nice gentleman, easy to talk to. He lived in Princestown. He would drop me home on a Friday, pick me up from St. Augustine, and we drive down and chat and so on. Fellas like Joel Critchlow, who was Guyanese, actually. Very nice gentleman again, and people like Critchlow. Right? So these people really were my early influencers in terms of the technology. Okay. And they weren't snobbish people, right? Very down to earth, very normal. Okay, and I suppose some of that, reflected on me as well. And then this happened. It was May 81, my final year. Couple weeks, if not 1 week, before my final exam in my final year. Okay, in the dead of night it was, I remember, around midnight or soon thereafter. I heard this car coming, I was in Mount Lambert, and I heard this car coming in the background. This car, in fact, because the sound of the engine was very familiar to me. I knew instantly that something was wrong. Yeah, because this guy here, our daddy, really, who was at the center of our family, just died, got a heart attack. Normal, normal all day. Watch the news, 7 o'clock panorama. Got up and went inside, and that was it. Just like that. Okay.
Roger,
So yeah.
let me remark that you are now older than your father was when he passed away.
Yes.
And you have to be grateful that you're as strong and healthy as you are. So
thank you. So this was a very traumatic experience, you could well imagine.
Roger, do you mind me asking what work he did or where he was?
He at the time he was in Texaco.
Mhm.
right? He was a refinery operator. He was the only breadwinner
Mhm.
in our house. Of course, I being the second to last, the others would have gone on to their own situations and so on. But we were still young. We weren't married, most of us, right? Except for Radford, of course, who was in Scarborough, right? Yeah, so I was in the middle of preparing for exams. You know, in those days, we didn't have semester exams. They had one big exam at the end of the year, right? And if you failed that exam, you had to repeat the year,
The whole year.
the
Yeah.
whole year.
Yeah.
Yes,
Wait,
Unless
wait.
you get
And that
you
is
supplemental.
know,
and that is if you got to repeat.
that is if you got to repeat, yes. You know, so this thing happened like about a week or two before the start of those exams, right? And you know, in between all the sorrow and sadness and so on, you know, I sort of threw myself into the work, right? Sort of blanking out everything else, you know. And you know, in those days, men didn't cry. So I held a lot of stuff in, you know. So I passed the exam. Good news, passed and graduated with first class honors, in fact, right? And it was only 6 months, a year afterwards that, you know, this whole thing hit me, you know, and I broke down, cried uncontrollably, actually, you know. All right, so that was that. That was 1981. And coming out of that experience, I got a job at Colonial Life. That was really my first cobblestone that I would say that would be laid on this journey that I was about to embark on. Okay. Yeah, Colonial Life, they were my very first employers. In fact, they employed me during my second year, okay, during the summer, right? So I and a guy by the name of George Dagdale, right? Beautiful, beautiful human being, George was. He was albino, okay? And yeah, George died a few years after this, in fact. As a young man too, you know. Anyways, they had an IBM 4300 computer, which is this computer up in the back here. All right. And, you know, a lot of people, I met a lot of people, and they provided a lot of guidance to me. I got a guidance and advice to me, you know. I would really be invaluable on this journey, right? You know, I have here Claude Moussaib Ali. At the time, he was the actuary. Okay, he ended up being the head honcho at Clico and taking over, I believe. And you know, Lyndhurst could correct me on this after, you know, they wrapped up business and so on. Yeah. Another guy who provided some advice to me at the time was Andre Montag. Okay, and I'll tell you guys what he did for me in a little bit. He ended up to be a big politico himself, right? Later on in his life. And then Merlin, beautiful, beautiful soul, right? She happens to be the godmother of my first child. But you know, she used to pick me up and drop me home to St. Augustine. At the time I was living in St. Augustine. Okay. Yeah. So this is the green in the background is me. She came up and spent a few days by my house back in 2012. So this is the few pictures I have of her. Okay, we did we did, I met two guys I worked with very closely, a guy by the name of Bill Gaskin and Norris. I can't remember what Norris's name is right now. Okay, but they too was very instrumental in my personal development. Okay. All right. So this is Clico. Okay. But whilst I was, yes.
Can I make one comment about computers?
Okay, sure, certainly.
In 1964, at UWI, the computer they had was an IBM 360.
360.
IBM 360.
All right. Okay.
And also in 60, I would say 65, I had a week at Texaco. You know what computer they had?
An IBM 360 as well?
No, a Hollerith computer.
Oh, okay.
That took up about 3 or 4 rooms.
Okay.
Yeah. We still have punch card, but just to give you a sense of the evolution of computers.
Yeah. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. We have the Chinese to thank for computing, really, because the first computing device is something called the abacus. Okay, you remember the slate things that we children use as toys to count and so on? In some villages in China, they still utilize that. Okay, and the kinds of mathematics that they do, okay, they work out complicated formulae and so on, faster than on calculators, using those things today still. And how I know that is because some Chinese students in my class from China verified that that is in fact so at some of the marketplaces and so on. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about this. Whilst I was at Clico, I applied for a scholarship. Okay, because let's face facts. My father died. He was the main breadwinner. I have this degree here, right? My mother is a housewife, so I really had no other means, really. So I applied for this scholarship. And I'm in question 22 of this scholarship says, oops, let me just come back to this. Question 22 says, do you have a preferred university that you wish to attend? No, I just apply. I didn't have, proceed with anything. So I left it blank. Okay. Now, subsequent to applying for this scholarship, I went and I applied to some universities and so on. Okay. McGill University in Montreal accepted me free sheet. Yes, they said, because usually when people come from, developing country university, they have to go through an entrance year and so on. Okay. None of that. They said, come and do the program, right? From beginning, right? Like a normal student graduating from a Canadian university or whatever. Okay. Cornell University in New York, wherever Cornell is, also accepted me free sheet. Okay. So I am, I was in a quandary, yes, because what happened was that, I was awarded a scholarship, right? And because I had left this question blank, the Canadian government who administered the scholarship, they sent me to Concordia University. Okay. So my question was, well, what do I do? Right? Because I don't know nothing about Concordia. Yes, I have an acceptance to these top universities because McGill is a big school in Canada and I guess in North America. Okay, as is Cornell and so on, but I can't go there because I don't have the funds, right? So I went to this guy and I asked him, well, one day sat in his office chatting, laid it out, yes, and said, well, what do you think I should do? He said, boss, take this scholarship and forget about it. Yes, right? And so I took this scholarship and I went to Concordia University. Okay, I went because that's what it was. Okay, now the terms of the scholarship were brilliant, They paid my transportation. Okay, they gave me a $500 stipend. They paid my rent. They bought books. They bought clothes, right? Warm clothes and so on. Okay, so basically all my financial needs were taken care of. Okay, so the lesson I learned out of this is you have to have a plan. From earlier club, I had a plan. Yes, stick to the plan. Okay, and reach out to other people for guidance and advice. Okay, that was the lesson I learned out of this whole business. All right, just a quick note on IT pre and post 1983, because 1983 was a pivotal year, okay, in terms of information technology. Before 1983, okay, everybody used to use, everybody had dumb terminals. Okay, a dumb terminal was just a screen and a keyboard, end of story. Okay, and it was heavy, like this probably weighed 50 pounds at least. Okay, so when it sat on your desk, it's not moving. Okay, right? And each screen was connected to a mainframe in the basement. You see, so basically you had just one computer and everybody was connected to the same computer. Okay, you could only do, George, what is on that computer, right? Nothing else. No Microsoft Word, Microsoft didn't even exist then. But, and so in 1983, all right, what happened was that the PC was invented. Okay, the personal computer. And what that did, indeed and in fact, was that it gave everybody the opportunity to have a personal computer. As somebody in IBM explained to me back in 1996, this is a computer for a person. Yes, previously, you had to go to an office to use a computer, right? But all of a sudden, you could have a computer home. You could have a computer on your desk. Right? You could put anything you want to put on that computer, right? And it could be different from your friend who's sitting next to you, right? Everybody's computer is different. The problem with that is that now you don't have this big computer downstairs with anybody sharing anything, right? You see, so how to solve that, right? And the way we solve that is to put in what we call servers downstairs, okay, and allow these computers here, where everybody have their own PC on the desk, to connect to this computer downstairs. And the computer downstairs is where we keep the data and all the files for the business. So everybody, Dave could be doing Microsoft Word, George could be doing something else, Lyndhurst could be doing something else. But at the end of the day, if they want to access the corporate system, okay, they could have access to the data and so on that everybody else in the organization use on these servers down here. Okay, and so what we had was client-server computing. Okay, everybody was clients to this big. This was just a big version of what people had on the desks. Yes, to these servers downstairs. Okay, and that happened post 1983. Okay, so at the time, remember I started Concordia in 1982. Okay, so we at Concordia. Concordia was just one building. 11 stories. Prior, it was called Sir George Williams University. Okay, and this is where all of the Black Power thing from the late 60s happened. Okay, with Geddes, I don't know if Granger was there, Geddes Granger, now or subsequent to that, McCandle, Dagger, and all these fellas came out of St. George, Sir George University. It was just one tall building in in Montreal. Okay. Now, this was a heavily engineering-oriented program. Okay, so they dealt with things like artificial intelligence, robotics. That's not what it is I wanted to do. You see, that was my real field of computing. Okay, I was really interested in management. All right. Now, curiously, right? The first week I ended up in Montreal. Okay, check this. Concordia is here. There we go. Right? Dave is showing us some disc he found somewhere. Diskettes. Okay, we can talk about that later. Let me just finish this. Okay, Concordia was here, and a few blocks away was McGill University up here. Okay, right? This program, engineering, this program, look at the difference. Okay, this program here, right? Management, really, because it was closely aligned with the management faculty. Yeah. So I said, well, you know, I mean, what's the story with this, right? So I contacted the Association of Schools and Colleges of Canada. I told them, hey, you know, let me switch over to McGill. I have the approval, I have acceptance, full acceptance already. Yeah, you know, so and I'm living in Montreal, right downtown, close to the school. So it's not far, I don't have to move anywhere. You know, they say, okay, fine. All you need to do is get the approval of the government, which I did, yes. And the next semester, in the winter semester, I moved over to the program in McGill. Okay. Yeah, so the thing is, at Concordia, where I was doing this IT program, that first term, I fell in with the Caribbean Students Association, and I made some great friends up to today, you know, great friends. I participated in cultural events. This is a Christmas show. That's me in the back, in the stick there, if you don't recognize, right? You know, cultural events and so on they had for Christmas, the Christmas of that year. Okay, and most importantly, I met this lady who also came up to Montreal. You know, and we've been married now for almost 33 years. You see, right? Taku, if you don't know, she used to do geography with us in presentation in college. You see, so she came up to Concordia as well.
Okay.
Yes, interestingly. Okay.
DP,
yes, somebody has a question.
You may have mentioned this before, but when you were accepted for McGill and Concord and was it Cornell? I think it was, right?
Cornell and so on, yeah.
Yeah. So what was the difference between them and Concordia? Was it all scholarships, that free rides, or what?
No, but you see, if you didn't answer that question 22, the Canadian Colleges Association of Colleges and Universities just put you in a university that they think, you know,
best suited you.
Yeah, best suited me, you know.
Oh, okay. So you could have, yeah. So if you had to answer that question, maybe a little bit more specifically,
they would have sought that university out for me.
Okay, cool.
And that was the interesting thing.
At the time, did you know that McGill was a world-renowned institution?
Yes, I knew McGill was. That's why I applied for it, you know. Right?
Okay.
You know, okay. But that I applied for them subsequent.
So do you think you got good advice by just accepting the scholarship? You said you got advice.
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was because it allowed me to choose, you know. Had I said, okay, no, I don't want to go to Concordia, then there was no way I could end up at McGill because I had no means. I had no financial means, you know.
Yeah, the other difference, if I may, I mean, the difference between scholarship and being accepted at McGill is the Canadian government paid, as I said, paid for living expenses, medical expenses. You know, I had some of the best dental work ever in while I was at Queens, right? So they, you know, that's the difference between being accepted. Even if you got a free scholarship from the university for no tuition, you still have all the living expenses, and which you would have to pay out of pocket. And at the time, none of us, or very few of us, had that kind of money to do that. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, that would make even more sense now. Yeah, okay, I see it. Yeah.
Somebody told me, a Jamaican guy, a Jamaican colleague of mine actually said, you know, UWI St. Augustine, right, was great for Trinidadians, you know, because it was basically free. All we had to do was deal with caution money and so on. But it allowed a lot of students to graduate, you know, with a certain acumen that they could just move on to postgraduate, whether by scholarship or if they had the means, you know. And UWI was a great undergraduate school. Where it fell down, it wasn't such a top class graduate school, right? Except for agriculture, which has been around since the 50s, tropical agriculture. Okay, any more questions? No? So we still going. So Concordia still had this this card system, this punch card system. Okay, so I ended up at McGill. Now check this out. Okay, this is Concordia University, the whole university. Okay, at McGill, this is the School of Computer Science. To the top right here. Okay, right? So you know, in Concordia, I had a locker. That was it. Yes. In McGill, I had an office, you know, which I shared with another student as a postgraduate person. Okay. You know, the campus itself was a very nice campus. Okay. And at McGill, you know, we really started to use the PC. Okay. Right, so you see that big floppy disk you were showing here just now, Dave? Yes. Okay, that was the first PC that, you know, the first kind of disk transfer were used in this PC here. All right, this IBM PC. Okay, and one of the reasons why Bill Gates ended up as wealthy as he is because of a strategy that was adopted at IBM at the time. Now, this is just a machine, nuts and bolts, screws and metal, okay? For it to work, you need an operating system, okay? An operating system is like the driver of the car, okay? Yeah? The other software, like Word and Excel and Explorer and all these people are passengers in the car, okay? So if they want to go anywhere, they have to talk to the driver and say, boss, I'm going to, you know, Arima, yes? And the operating system will take you there, okay? IBM made the nuts and bolts machine, okay? And then said, anybody who have a good idea for an operating system could come along, okay? And up comes this little boy named Bill Gates out of his father's garage. And he created something called DOS, Disk Operating System, which could be used on this machine, okay? Now, in the meantime, Apple computers came up with their own machine, all right? Their strategy was that only an operating system made by Apple could be used on an Apple machine, okay? So what happened next was that all these fellas in Japan, Samsung and, you know, Canon and all these people, Acer and all these people, made the physical machine that IBM was making. And they called them IBM compatibles because it was just like, and guess which operating system they use? Disk operating system, okay, made by Bill Gates, right? So 99% of the computers on the market, right, all during the 1990s and so on, were IBM and IBM compatibles, PCs, okay, using the disk operating system created by Bill Gates and them, okay? Whereas Apple, you only could use the Apple OS, the Apple operating system made by, now up to today, okay, up to today as I speak to you, all Apple devices, whether it's an iPhone, or an iPad, or an iPod, or whatever, still use only Apple operating systems.
Yep.
Nobody else, not Windows, not Linux, not anybody else. They all use Apple. Nobody else uses Apple operating systems except Apple machines. Yeah. So that's a little computer history there for you. Okay, by way of a strategy.
Hey, Roger.
Yes.
I wanna
Peter.
make sure Paul Allen gets some due credit here, because
Mhm.
when IBM came out with the machine, Bill Gates was actually at Harvard, and Paul Allen is the one who came to him and said, "Hey, IBM just came out with the PC. This is our opportunity." They were both friends in high school at Lakeside in Seattle at the time. Before that,
yeah, but they made tons and tons and tons
Yeah.
of money.
Yeah.
Making him one of the richest men in the world.
Yeah.
Right? Because basically you come up with something once and you make a copy of it.
There's a little story that there was another guy, name I don't recall, who actually had a better product for the IBM, but he did not show up on time for the meeting with IBM.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. So yeah. So I came back to Trinidad, all right, and from Canada in '85. Okay, I was offered several positions, one at Central Bank and the other one at Caroni 1975 Limited. If Peter is here, he will be saying how I bastardizing the people's name. But anyways, right? Caroni had two projects. Okay, one, because Caroni is into sugar, okay, but the IT department had did an outreach to the central government, and they were awarded two projects. Okay, one at Customs and Excise for the implementation of a customs management system on the port. Okay, it's a UN system called ASICUDA. Okay, and the other project was for an import licensing system, controlling the negative list. Okay, so this is what the negative list is. These are banned substances, but not banned, but you regulated substances back in the day. Okay, so you want to bring in tires, TV, rice, whatever. A whole heap of things was on this negative list to protect local industry from foreign competition. Okay, as well as security. You don't want men bringing in guns and so on. Okay, so this like negative listing was long. Okay, all right, and we got this job. I was the project team leader. Okay, and the job was to be done out of the Ministry of Trade at Riverside Plaza, East Port of Spain, basically. Okay, yeah. So this is my badge here at Caroni back in the day. I still have them somewhere. Okay, and the interesting thing about this job is that I've met some of the most remarkable people. These three fellas here, I invited one of them, but with the blackout, I don't know he wasn't able to make it. Okay, we see this guy here, Keith. Keith and I were to become very, very close, right? This is him here speaking at my wedding, basically on my behalf because my father was gone, right? And you know, of all the people I have met in my journey, right? This guy here was the best manager that anybody could have. You know, bright, you know, considerate, you know, a teacher. And I could go on. Okay. Christian that was just, he was just bright. He was just a bright guy. Right? You know, he was you know, KB's deputy, right? One of the brightest people I've ever met, actually, you know. And he ended up at Republic Bank, leading their IT, either Republic or Royal, one of these things. Okay, and then there is Bill. Okay, Bill started, Bill and I started off in Clico. Okay, I was working directly with Bill, actually, you know, and to my surprise, when I ended up at Caroni, you know, we worked together on this particular project. So it was basically Bill and myself. You know, when Radford, you know, we went to Trinidad a few years back, Radford and I, you know, and so we went to buy Bill and no Pinot. Yep. You know, I think, you know, from Bill's persona, you know, we think that, I'm sure Radford would probably, like, what would Radford be to see this crazy person for? Yes. But Bill, you know, I think you're very surprised. Bill is a very bright guy, bright, you know, sharp, you know, knows a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Especially about the history of Lopino.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the land that was given to the people in Lopino that some of them still maintain. The whole history of Lopino that you don't hear about.
Yeah, yeah. And if you pass Bill on the street, you say, oh, that's another guy, you know what I'm saying? Right? But, you know, A class in terms of IT, right? In terms of his knowledge, right? So I was very fortunate to meet these three, you know. You know, I also met other people who were on this journey as well as young people. Okay, these fellas, we were working with the IBM System 36 in terms of implementing this. Ian Thompson, Lester's brother, you know, key person on the team, right? Mervyn and Stephen and Juliet and so on. Also, young people. Okay, so we were a group of 5 young people, right? Dealing with this import license situation. Okay, and being shepherded by these 3 bright fellas, you know, on that journey, you know. So this job here, what this job taught me, okay, it was really about the power of teamwork. Okay, and then when the work itself is interesting, right, people will give 110%, you know. Right? And when they feel that their work is valued and so on. I remember, never forget, Ian Thompson. Okay. Now, Caroni is in the middle of the cane, the factory, right? And we were working on a particular, you know, piece of, you know, code. And one morning I got to the office, you know, like about, you know, 6:45, 8:45, 7:30. And I see Ian still there. So I asked him, Ian, what's going on? He said to me, boy, you know, I was sleeping last night and I just got this idea and I figured it out. Right? And 2 o'clock in the morning, he got his father to bring him from Coconut Drive up to Caroni, right? So that he could work on this thing, right, during the night. You know, I mean, that to me was remarkable because, you know, he didn't have to do it, but, he just wanted to do it because, some of the things that we did in that particular system, was very, very creative, So yeah, so that was that. So I spent like 2 years there, and then I had I left, okay, because I had Guyana on my mind, right? Guyana was on my mind, right? As I was leaving, Keith called me into his office and he said, well, Roger, I have this thing I'm trying to do in Guyana, because he was Guyanese actually. Yeah, he used to work at Linden, the bauxite. He was the IT guy in the bauxite industry. He said, I have this thing with the government and so on, but I need some fellas to help me. Okay, and if you'll be willing, after this job to come and, we can partner and work on it and so on. Okay, and so we set up a partnership really with some other players. I don't know, Linus, you remember Memory Bank? No, Memory Bank? You're on mute.
Yeah, Memory Bank Computers.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Ghani, who was the principal at Memory Bank Computers, he was one of the guys who came with us initially, okay, as well as people like Michael Tony, okay. Remember, Joe Tony was the guy who was in Parliament when the Abubak people rushed in and said, who is the leader? Who is the leader? Right? Well, Michael is his big brother, okay. And a fellow by the name of Joe Teixeira, who ended up running Coca-Cola in Trinidad. Right? But all of us came together. Okay, I was clearly the youngest one of them, right? And we went after this job in Guyana, the Inland Revenue Taxation. Okay, we were to develop an income tax administration system in Guyana. Okay, I remember the first time I went on Guyana. Okay, I arrived in Guyana. We arrived like the night, I never went to Guyana before. Okay, and this was 87. Okay, yeah. So we arrived in Guyana. Okay, the main part of the city was here by St. George Cathedral. Okay, this is St. George Cathedral. I used to live like across town, like if you're from downtown to the savannah. Okay, that's the general distance that this map covers. Okay, from where I am here, okay, to, I don't know if you guys could see my pointer, can you? I don't think so. To about here, which is where, so this is the St. George Cathedral. Okay, very nice main street. Yes, maybe like in southern United States where you have this boulevard running down the middle with trees, big trees on the side. Very nice. Okay. To my surprise, I was able to pull up a picture of the house that we stayed in. Okay, which looked like this. Okay, right? Which is exactly this house. Okay, Lyndhurst mentioned that Guyana now is different because people have money, right? So I went on Google Earth or Google Maps or whatever, and I typed in the address of this place, and this house came up. In fact, it's now a concrete house, right? It was a wooden house when we lived there. Okay. So the first morning I got up in this house, I'm hearing this noise. You guys are hearing a noise?
I says horses on
And
the
I
road
said, like,
there.
what the hell is this? Right? Like all day, but not all day, all morning. Right? I said, what the hell is this? Right? And in truth and in fact, what it was these horses men going to work. Yes. Right? Riding horses. Right? As is normal. Because I am in the front room of the house. You see? Good. Another thing that surprised me about Guyana is how much information I was able to learn about cows, right? I see Dave is laughing. Okay, so on any given day at 8 o'clock in the morning, you would see a herd of cows. Nobody looking after these cows. You see about 50 cows just walking down the pavement like it's nobody's business. Just going from home to the park or whatever to the field, and 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you will see them walking back. Yes. Normal, like it's nobody's business. Yes.
DP, the reason why I was laughing is when you talk about that horse clippy clopping, right? In 2018, I think Robin and I were in Guyana there. We were staying at the Regency hotel, right?
Yeah,
which was not far from the Georgetown market there. And that same song that you talk about, in the morning I look out there to see where it was, and it was one of these, but they were not carrying people. It was leaving the hardware.
They were carrying
hardware. Like some lumber and some stuff. And parallel to that and concurrent to that, cars were driving right around there.
Like normal.
This is now. But it brought back that memory, and it made me think about it. And they were living in, everybody going and the vehicles passing.
Yeah, it was normal practice, right? Because I remember in another place I stayed at, Richard, every Sunday morning, you go out on Saturday night, whatever, Sunday morning, because I had a market not too far from me, same story, horses up and down the street. So that was one experience, okay? The other experience was this place, okay? I labeled this like green eggs and ham because Guyana came from a long ways, a long, hard struggle. Okay, this here was one of the top ranked hotels in Guyana. Back in the day, Black people couldn't go to this hotel except as servants. You see, it was called the Park Hotel. Okay. I used to stay at this hotel, because what happened was that, we would go down like every 2 weeks or for a week or whatever and stay at the hotel. Now, the thing is, Ghana was in a state of real distress. They had an embargo by the US, okay? They couldn't get foreign exchange. Foreign exchange was a problem, okay? When you reach Mary Airport, the first thing, okay, men was asked if you want currency, if you have currency, to change Guyanese dollars into TT dollars or US dollars or whatever. Okay, men would show up at this hotel, okay, with a trunk full of money, right? And, say, okay, check me at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock and so on. Men would come to change money by the hotel, no big deal, right? Imports were a problem. They couldn't get corn. Okay. So I am, having breakfast at the Park Hotel. Okay. And I'm presented with this plate of stuff here in front of me. Right? I said, but I asked for eggs. Right? I asked for eggs, the eggs gray. You know what I'm saying? Gray, I never saw gray eggs in my life. Yes. So I go, well, what is this? The fellow said, well, we have to feed the chickens them eggs, rice, because we don't have, at least I don't know how true that was, but that was his explanation. Right? So okay, whatever. Right? Security, water was a problem, Linus. Okay, imagine I reach in this hotel, no water, I'm living up on the 3rd floor or the 4th floor or something. no water. Go downstairs to the reception. The woman tells me, look a bucket. Go and pull up and carry it. Serious. You know, another problem I had was security. One night I arrived maybe a Sunday or something, right? Late, about 10 o'clock. About 2 o'clock, I just felt this presence over me. I said, but what the hell? When I spin around, this huge woman standing over my bed. Like, what the hell you doing here? You know, right? She says to me, sorry, sir, it's security, security check. I chased out the room and so on. And the next morning, I went down to the front desk and complained. They said they didn't know nothing about that. But the true story behind this thing was that the room was empty. I checked in very late that night. So she and the security person she was with yes, were looking for a venue, you see. And they so happened to find me inside of there, right? That was the nature of the thing that we had to contend with. Okay, plus the no power thing. Okay, the no power thing was a real problem. Okay, so we would go there for a week at a time and have no electricity. Okay, so this was a problem. Eventually, what happened was that I moved away from the people, the other guys who we worked with, and you know, I decided to open up a little company, a little shop, okay, and call it Quality Computer Services at the top of Edward Street. This is a new photograph, right? I picked this up from Google Earth. This is Napa, you know, Napa around the Savannah. Okay, so this building, this little building is where we were. Okay, at the top of Edward Street. I think Royal Bank or something is one of these two buildings. Okay, it was small space, right? It was nice little small space. And what I did, I hired some young people straight out of UWI to continue the development work on the income tax administration system in Guyana. Okay, so you know, we got some computers and so on, you know, set up a nice office, and we did the development work in Port of Spain. Okay, and then we would just go down to Guyana and try to implement if they had electricity. Yes. Okay. So some of the lessons learned out of this experience, okay, is that it's always good to be on good terms with people in the neighborhood. You see, because during the 1990s, when did the coup happen? July 1990, yes, right, not 91. Okay, all the Port of Spain was burning down, and people were looting people left, right, and center. Okay, the neighbors in this area here, these people living next door and so on, made sure that nobody came and touched our building. You know, made sure. One of the guys told me afterwards, he said, boss, you know, there are people around here, but we made sure that nobody came and touched all the building. You see? So it's always good to be on good terms with other people. Austin had his hand raised.
Yeah, so the one thing you didn't mention is, was it financially a struggle in any way, or were you making tons of money at that time?
No, well, we had to be creative, okay? Because foreign exchange was a problem, okay? So one of the ways we got paid was in shrimp and prawns. So basically, the government would give us a container of shrimp, yes, and then we would have to move that up to Puerto Rico and subsequently to Miami and sell it basically and distribute the funds, right? So that is generally how it works. One has to be creative. Okay. Now the work itself, if anybody else had any questions, I see there are a number of people in the chat, a number of comments in the chat. Okay, so let me talk about the work itself, if nobody has any question. Okay, the work of the Inland Revenue in Guyana. So this is the building that we worked in. Okay, it was the GPO, the General Post Office. Okay, they had one wing and we had the next wing. This was the Income Tax Office. All right. So, like I said, we developed the software and we went down here to this building, okay, to work out of this building. So water was a problem. Okay. Now, back then, I always advised anybody who went down to Guyana, do not, under any circumstance, drink the people water from the pipe. Yes, under no circumstance, right? Because many people, right, who went with us and didn't follow that advice had major diarrhea and bellyache and so on. Okay, not only that, but this building had no water. Okay, the toilets were in a state of shambles. Okay, it was almost embarrassing when the guy, the World Bank guy came, right? And he wanted to use the facilities. And he said, you know, because I wouldn't go there. In fact, I used to go to the building behind here. You see this brown building? The Stephen Todd's and Fogarty's back then. Right? I used to, when I had to take my break, I would go there. Okay, because their facilities were fairly good. Okay, comparatively. But it was embarrassing. But anyways, because of the no electricity situation, they had no elevators, Peter. No elevators. Okay? So how are you getting this big, you know, System 36 computer up these steps without an elevator? Okay? So in fact, what happened was that they got a crane because we were on the top floor. Yes? A crane to lift it up in this big wooden crate. You understand? You know, and they maneuver it and so on and so forth. And of course, when they open the crate, the computer upside down, right? And the whole top of it mashed up. You see, and everybody started to blame everybody else. Oh, the people in Miami sent it so. Oh, the people in the airport. Oh, and so on and so forth. What that meant, though, is that we couldn't install the system on time, right? So the contract ended, and the system was only partially implemented, actually. All right. I'll come back to this story because it has a happier ending. All right. We did, you know, we developed the work in COBOL and so on. Okay, using all the strategies of databases and so on a flat file system, if anybody is aware of that. Okay. What are some of the lessons learned from this experience? The importance of resilience. You gotta be resilient. And Guyanese people were very resilient because they had to be, and because we had to be as well. Okay? During those times, Lyndhurst, it was all these people who passed through the Piaco and so on, the ones with the Guyanese suitcase, right? They are the ones who carry through the Guyanese economy, you know, right? Every weekend, men used to fly up to Trinidad and Barbados and so on and bring things back. Okay? You couldn't get anything in Guyana stores, but if you search hard for it on the pavement, you could get it. They used to call it the pave, you know? So if you want to buy something, you go down to the pave. You see what I'm saying? Okay, and like I said earlier before we started, you know, when things got very bad, you know, we used to console ourselves with this statement: just when you think it couldn't get worse, it does, you know. So there was no end, really. Okay, you guys are okay? Tired? Yeah? Okay, and then this was in 92, 91, 92. Okay, and then something miraculous happened. This guy, Tim Berners-Lee, invented something called the World Wide Web. Yes, in 1989, but it actually blew up in 1992, 1993. Okay, and you all have heard about something called the internet, yes? Yeah? Without this invention, called the World Wide Web, people will, you know, the internet will still be something only universities people use. Okay? But you see this blue thing here? Underlined blue thing is called a hyperlink. Okay? It's like normal text, people could read it. Yes? Okay, but like unlike this text here, which is not blue and underlined, okay, when you click on it, what happens is that it goes to another computer somewhere else in the world and accesses that information that is on that computer. Okay, so now you don't have to be a genius. You don't have to be an expert. You could be a normal human being and use this thing called the internet to get whatever set of information from anywhere in the world that you can. Okay, so Tim Berners-Lee, he is a Britisher, okay, from Oxford University and was subsequently knighted by the Queen. So it's now Sir Tim Berners-Lee. And this is what he said, that in those days, back in those days, there was different information on different computers, but you had to log on to different computers to get what it is you want. So sometimes you had to learn different programs on each computer, okay? And often it was easier to go and ask people when they were having coffee, yes? Because this was so difficult to get information from different computers all over the world. And Tim Berners-Lee devised this simple concept of a hyperlink or hypertext. So it's not normal text, which is what you see here. Okay, but it is something called hypertext, HTTP, okay, hypertext protocol, okay, which is what he did. Yes, and all of a sudden, the world changed. You see what I'm saying? Because we have subsequently e-commerce, subsequently social media, subsequently local, mobile, and all of these kinds of things because of what he did in 1989. Okay. All right. So in 1991, let me just try to bring this home quickly because I still have Dennis, it looks like we're gonna have 3 parts of this because there's just so much. I hope I'm not boring you people. Yes, it's almost 9:30. Okay, so what happened was that after this Guyanese experience, I said, you know what, and Austin had asked the question. It was becoming financially difficult now to maintain an office, to maintain staff. Okay, basically I had to pay something out of my own income, my own savings, right? And, whenever we get paid and so on, we would have to top up, okay? Yeah, so when the Guyanese project was ended, okay, did some work around the place with the telecoms people, okay? When I decided to wrap up the company and made sure that, everybody, all my employees, went elsewhere and got secured, right? So I don't know if you know Peter Griffith Linus, from Coconut Drive, or the Griffiths. He went to the UNNTT and subsequently to Bosnia and Somalia and other places in IT itself. He was one of those young people I took straight out of school. Okay, Cynthia, right? She ended up at Clico because one of the contracts we got was at Clico as well. Paula went to Central Bank. You know, Penny and her sister went away, and Wanda went to Neil and Marcy. Okay, so I wrap up the company and decided to go as an independent consultant. Okay, unfortunately, I was able to get a contract with the Inter-American Development Bank. You know, fairly nice, comfortable contract too. You know, to deal with national housing, land settlement, and squatter regularization. Okay, so most of my work was really focused on the public sector, as you can see. Okay, developing systems for them. Okay, yes. Okay, so what the work really, yes.
Would it be possible to try and wrap things up in 2 or 3 minutes and then do a question and answer kind of session to close off the evening?
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
you find a good place from which
Yeah.
you could continue. Yes.
After this, okay, I will wrap up. Okay, because I have a piece on WhatsApp. Okay, which came after this, and that will take, like, you know, Wasa is such an interesting place, right? It will take a while, so I'll wrap up this and we could talk afterwards. Okay, because I still have a part 2 I could include that there. Okay, so this was the squatter regular. You know, these houses in Dabadi and so on, and all these, you know, these government scheme houses. Okay, so we were contracted, or at least I was contracted as an individual consultant to develop the financial accounting and information system, okay, for monitoring that whole program. The program had 2 parts, okay. It was the site and settlement program where people apply for houses and so on, or pre-constructed houses, or what they call starter houses, all right. And it was also a squatter regularization. So men who squatting, okay, could apply for legal title of the, so all those people in Bamboo, okay, who prior were squatters, right, could have their whole situation regularized, okay? So I developed a system in Clipper. Clipper is just a compiler for DBase code. Remember DBase back in the day, Peter? Yeah, no. Right, but it was a very comprehensive system. It was a multi-user system. More than one person could use it on a PC at the same time, and so on and so forth. Interestingly, I developed this system around 1992. And I remember going back, you know, like in about 2005 or something. And these people still using this thing. They're still using the system I created way back then. You know, I said, wow, you know, right? Because I moved on and I, you know, went to Africa, came up to Canada and so on, and these people were still using that. So anyways, I met some guys there as public servants. Okay, some of them were really second to none. Okay, I met Clyde Zander. Okay, and this is his music, right? You know, jazz aficionado in the Caribbean, master jazzman, right? This is Mr. Walker. Yeah, he was the architect on the program. So all these houses here, right, he designed as an architect, okay? Low-cost housing, basically, all right? Some of the lessons that I learned, don't diss people, you know, in the public sector, because men work hard, you know what I'm saying? Right, you might know what it is they're doing or whatever, okay? But many public servants, they work hard at very challenging jobs, okay? Right, and most of the times, they try to do their best. Excuse me for the noise in the background, people, okay? but we're gonna wrap this thing up in a second. So yeah, the next job I did a short job for the IDB, a short-term project, okay, to develop an IT plan for the environmental protection program. And I was based at the office of the Prime Minister in the White House around the Savannah. Okay, when we did that, it was about a 3-4 month job. So, you know, it was really nothing to shout about. But the important lesson I learned, okay, and Lynn Hurst could back me up on this because, you know, you remember where I used to live in Cascade on Mount Honolulu?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the lesson I learned was that as an independent consultant, you have to take care of your own business because nobody else will take care of it for you.
Damn right.
Yes? Yes.
Damn right.
Yeah. So I hooked up with Lynn Hurst. You know, I think you were at maritime at the point, or sometime around then. Yeah. And he sold me a pension policy, which actually I still have after 30 whatever years. And that is my nest egg. That is one of my nest eggs for when I retire. Yes.
You're lucky I wasn't working, Clico.
There you go. There you go. Right? Yeah. So I will stop there for a second. Okay. I could go on to WASA, but you know, this is a long discussion. All right. So yeah, I will stop there and ask you guys if you have any questions or concerns. Okay. Yeah.
First question, where's Earl Wilkins?
Earl, I have no idea, you know. Earl was the guy who was the project team leader for the customs project, okay, at Caroni.
I know,
right?
I'm surprised you didn't have his name up with the Caroni thing.
Well, the thing is, Earl was a guy from the US, okay? I think he went back to the US afterwards. I learned some lessons in professional behavior, actually, that I teach students, you know. I mean, I remember one Friday, actually, at Caroni, I came back from lunch, and there was Earl and Bill, you know, Bill, square off in the middle of the office and, you know, shouting and whatever, right? So I said, gentlemen, please, you know, this is an office, right? You don't carry on like this here. I mean, I was a young man still, right? You know, right? You know, so I calmed them down and they went their ways. Later on, I spoke to Bill and said, well, what the hell was that? You know, what was that about? So he says to me, because Bill was like senior to us, he says to me, Roger, boy, you don't know, you know how frustrating it is dealing with this guy. You know, you give him a problem, you know, and he looked at it upside down, he looked at it inside out, left, right, whatever, you know, takes like, you know, months and months to, I mean, you check him and ask him, you know, what's the solution? He'll tell you, you know what, this problem doesn't have a solution. You know, I just cannot deal with that. You see, so analysis paralysis is something that is real. You see, and
I have a major
at the time,
at that time, you were in the prime of your development. At that time, your profile was world class in the IT world. I was a bit surprised that I know you took on projects, the Guyana projects, the different things, right? But especially after Caroni, I was wondering what your choice was in terms of corporate world, comfort zone, but climbing, especially in North America, as against other things that you would have done, like World Bank projects and stuff. So I was wondering if there was something in your background that led you into more being a servant of the needs of the people and the countries, rather than being absolutely selfish, given the profile that you had internationally.
Yeah, I think that I would have done more good to more people, to more ordinary people doing this than say working for an IBM or working for a Microsoft or some bank somewhere, right? So very early o'clock, since I was in McGill actually, my thinking was that I need to use my mental capacities and stuff to really help as many ordinary people as I could. Okay, and the only way I could, or the first thing I really thought about is working within, you know, the public sector, because the reach of that is much greater in terms of the numbers of people, right? So that was one of the reasons. As then, you know, my mind really wasn't thinking about the corporate world per se.
There,
Yeah.
are there any, did you know anybody else at McGill who went to like Pres?
No, actually, I was one of two Trinidadians at in the computer science program at McGill. I think the other one was a undergrad, but interestingly, he was Chinese, and he didn't hang out with Caribbean people. He hung out with Chinese people, right? Which was interesting, you know. Because I'm thinking this is a Chinese guy, but when he comes and speaks to me, he's Trini, wrong Trini. You know, I'm saying like, okay, what's up with that? You know?
TP,
Yeah.
TP, when your father passed away, like what was the size of the family at that point? How many siblings and all that sort of stuff you had?
Well, 11 children. My parents had 11 children. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Radford is number 10 and Radford is number 2 and I'm number 10, right? So besides himself, was Easton in New York?
Yes, Easton was
Besides
in New
the
York.
first 3 who were abroad, everybody else was in Trinidad.
Yeah.
So then back in those days, if your father passed away, I'm sure there was no kind of income coming in past his, you know, once he passed. I mean, so I presume the whole family had to chip in to support your mother.
You know, I am.
We were all at the stage where everybody was working.
Yeah.
I think all of us had our own family, etc. So I don't think it was much of a problem as such. And we took care of our mother. You know.
But thank God you had a big family that you guys could do that, right?
Yeah, I was always surprised as the little one in the family, how my mother continued without missing a beat.
Yep.
You know, it's remarkable. Dave?
Yeah, I could comment on that a little bit because there was a real parallel to with your old man and my dad. My dad actually passed away at age 58. He was also gainfully employed at Texas, whatever you call it at that time.
Texaco.
And the good thing about it, Roger, Ahmad, was, and since your dad was a refinery operator, there was a good plan in place for a continued pension. And I'm not sure if you know if it was the same with you, but with my dad it was. For 10 years of support, the pension went to his spouse. So there was that work was in there because we were faced with the same thing when my dad lost, but then by that time we were already employed too, but we had to make sure other things took care. But when mommy was fine, she said she got that money to support herself in some way. So I suspect it was probably the same situation. Right?
And you also had access to the medical facility.
You remember that point of view dispensary?
Hospital.
That dispensary and all that medical service was
we had all that available to you.
Yeah.
Texaco was a shit. Because my old man died at 48 working.
Yep. Yeah.
Nobody should done one there ever.
Yeah.
Now,
You know,
the-
one
the
thing
other-
one thing I wanted to ask you, DP,
Mhm.
your decision to go back Trinidad at that time, the first time, was it part of the contract, the scholarship agreement?
Yes, it was. Yes, it
Okay.
was.
Right.
It was part of the scholarship contract. You know, I had to, whatever time I spent in Canada, I had to like repay in time with a government in the government service, right? Now, I never really had an expectation or desire really to stay up here in the cold. I mean, Montreal was nice and somebody was cold, you know what I'm saying? And I always wanted to return and contribute in some way. So it wasn't really a big deal. Watson?
So, you know, you guys will hear me talk about this repeatedly again, but there's something that you mentioned in your presentation that just goes along with what we have talked about previously, and it's the impact on culture and how it shapes our behavior and stuff when you talk about, you know, the cultural piece in Trinidad that men are not supposed to cry and show emotion. And even when your dad died and you find it difficult to really let out your true emotions, it took you a while for that to happen, you know? So, I mean, I've heard that story like a million times from people, from men in Trinidad, you know? So it just, you know, proves that my number one rule, culture trumps everything, is there's definitely some validity to that. So that's what I thought of when you made that comment.
Yeah.
You grew up with that. That as a boy, if you get licks, you're not supposed to cry. So that is kind of instilled in you from early days. You know, I have a hard time when it comes to funeral. You know, and one of the things that happened to me when my father died is that I went to see the body at the funeral home, right? And I was taken aback at the body itself. Okay, and since then, I don't view bodies at funerals. When my mother died, I did not go to see the body. The only place I saw it was at the funeral itself. My sister died a couple of years ago. The same thing happened. She had an open viewing in the church. I waited until the casket was closed. Okay, so there's certain things that happen to you that, you know, I find it very difficult to go and view a body, for example.
Interesting. So at the next talk, I'll talk about the Wasa experience. Things happened in Wasa that I think passed over the heads of many Trinidadians. Okay, but we were kind of in the middle of it. You know, you remember when the dollar went from 4.25 to 6.10, right? That happened, you know, as a not necessarily a direct response, but part of the whole strategy with what was going on with WASA and TNTEC and PTSC and so on at the time. Okay, and that was a masterful stroke that people like Wendell Motley and they played, in my opinion. Manning, before he died, also said the same thing in 2012.
DP, save it. Save it.
Yeah,
for
I'll save
part-
it. I'll
for
save it.
part
I'll
two.
save it. Also, Morris Marshall. You remember Morris Marshall
Yes.
from
Yes.
Lavantil? He
Was
died.
squeezed out.
He died. Okay. A week after a particular episode happened. Well, not a week, 2 weeks in fact, because he died 13 days after he fell ill. Okay. So it was probably 3 weeks. Okay. I remember I was there and when it happened, I said, man, Morris Marshall must be feeling like a cockroach. you know, right? And next week he was in the hospital on his deathbed, more or less, you know. Dave,
Yeah, well, DP, as we say next week, we can deal with that. But first of all, I
the
really
next week
enjoyed
or somebody else's next week?
Sorry, no, I'm not next week, whenever.
Next
But
month.
but I wanted to just some things that Orson asked about, and I think for those of us like Linus and myself who stayed a little while longer, because I'm looking at the group here. Well, Dennison and Linus and Peter and myself, we stayed kind of long before we left to migrate, and well, of course, Linus still down there. But for benefit of Orson, another thing I wanted to point out, first of all, you see that concept on our culture about big men not crying or small or boys not crying, that is changing, in Trinidad. And Linus can probably attest to that. All of us now are dealing with that. And it's a good segue into the book next week. Not next week, next month. So that's good. But Orson, one more thing I wanted to point out, and I was glad you showed it, DP. Well, I'm glad you showed a lot of things, but remember the photograph you showed with the university? And the building up on the other side, I don't know how many of you pick it. That is the first Imperial College of Tropical Agriculture. And that holds university. I don't know if you ever get a chance to go back to Trinidad. That building is still there. And well, the last time I was there, just 2019, it was still up in prime shape. And it's one of the, I think that should be a heritage site in my opinion. And that strength came out behind that's why even now I am part of that Journal of Tropical Agriculture. And it still persists. So you're right.
So Dave, when we go to Trinidad, I'd like you to take me there. Seriously,
I have a maxi taxi waiting already.
All right, cool.
Don't worry, Linus will drive you all around, man. Linus is that guy, you know?
Linus will be, I don't want Linus driving. I want Linus to be the co-pilot on that trip, right? But Linus, you got to fight with Govin, because Govin is saying, I want to take pictures. He just go in the front seat. But this maxi taxi, Linus going to be the commentator. You're going to know it. We're going all along by Badal and places like that. I'm ready for it. Just when Linus tells me to come down there, we're coming down.
All right.
One introduction here. Before everybody came on, I was mentioning that I was Michael
Face a little bit to the right.
Come back to the mic. All right.
Yeah, good.
Alan Ram was in Trinidad recently. Apparently his mother was up by him, so he came back to bring her. And Michael met with him and had promised to go and visit with him, didn't, and has all the regrets in the world. He is also speaking about, so obviously, he looks at the emails and the thread about the plan you all have for this 2022, I think, to have a reunion. So he was asking me if it was virtual or whatever, but I think he wants to come. He's gotten to the stage of having divorced himself from his friends for so long in the pursuit of his life and his business, etc. He's gotten to the stage of wanting to be part of the people who he grew up with. So he expressed that very clearly today. But he says what will happen is that people will talk for 5 days straight. There's so much to talk about, you know, because he has been absent now. He was really, really optimistic about really trying to become a bigger part of the group.
Yeah, and really? You know, Dave could real talk.
Yeah, so Linus, just connect him directly with Grahu via WhatsApp and let them figure that out. Also, tell him that we just really talk for 5 days straight. That's why we're spreading it out over 25 years.
It is not. In some of them, like, I get up and fall asleep and hear the talk. And sometimes the friggin' thing is the same talk, but what good? They just repeat it a few times. I go, hear it. I remember asking Holder, that the same talk? He said, yeah, man, you get up in time for the rerun, you know. No, but that is good, Linus. That is good. Lord. I think it's coming to a time where we need, when it's safe enough in terms of the COVID, I think, to go to Trinidad. I think we need to do one down here now.
Yeah, we should. I agree. Yeah, that would be nice.
Hey,
wait,
awesome outing Austin missed the outing when he was in Standard 5, you know. We had a carry him on an outing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the man earned some good brownie points. You know, to why people are some clean up thing, you know. Everything is priceless. For everything else is MasterCard. You get real points there. You know? I see Peter he hand up there. Go ahead.
Hey, the Peiza, you could answer this week or whenever you want to come back. But one of the things that I'm in a parallel field to you, but my experience is so much different from yours. It's remarkable. But one of the questions I was going to ask you is, with regards to being on the bleeding edge of technology and applying that to solving problems, it seems like your journey has more been about within the public sector and how to apply whatever technology at that time to solving public sector problems. But I don't get the sense that chasing after bleeding edge technology has been kind of a focus of your journey. I don't know.
Not really. Subsequent to all of this, I did work for Microsoft.
Yeah,
Okay.
I visited you when you were there. I remember.
Yeah. When I came back, from the Ghana experience the second time around. Okay, and that was a more successful story. In my estimation, it's not really about bleeding edge or technology, really. Okay, it's about systems. Okay, because one of the big problems, whether it is water, whether it's IT, is the fact that the systems have collapsed. The old, the decrepit, and people just doing whatever they want to do. Because when systems don't work, people will do what they want to do. Yes. I had a particular experience, in the Ghana thing, collections for income tax returns. These girls in the cashier booth and so on used to be working every day until 10 o'clock in the night and stuff, trying to reconcile and balance and other things. And I developed the program, we installed the program, and it worked nicely and whatever. Couple of weeks afterwards, I went back and said, well, how are things going? I asked them, well, you all remember what it is you used to do a couple of weeks ago? People ask me, what you talking about, man? Right? Like they just totally forget that they used to be working 10 o'clock every night, because now they could get home at a reasonable hour. Right. Because the computer was reconciling all of it for them, and they could find if they have a few dollars short where the shortfall was. Quick time, you see. And the same is true for water. One of the big problems with water is that WASA produces all the water that, at least when I was there, that Trinidadians need. The problem was getting the water from WASA facilities to, I don't know, Dennis's house, wherever in South, because all of it leaking out, right? So there is that. All right.
So Dennis, maybe you can comment something while you're recording on for those who see it, like the voice for next week, etc.
Yeah, well, Dave, you're on for next week, and this weekend I will send out a schedule for next month.
Right. So I will reach out again to Khalid because he's supposed to be speaking tomorrow. So I will just, he responds really nicely if I contact him directly or we talk on the phone. So I'll remind him that he's up for next week, and he's going to talk about his journey. And we entitled it From Merrick to Khalid, with a culminating experience in his last visit to Ghana. Because, I mean, honestly, until I had met him back in Toronto, I didn't know him anything other than Robert Merrick in Form 1B. I don't know if Roger remember when he started with us down there.
Yeah, that's one guy I remember for sure.
Yeah. So that's going to be that experience. And I think, as you said, Dennis, I don't know if you need any more update from me for the agenda, but I think we're pretty good till June. And everybody on that from my list has confirmed that they will be on.
Yeah.
And thank you
Dennis,
again,
if I could
Roger. I
add,
really enjoyed this because I saw so many parallels, and I'm looking at my buddy Peter down there, and I know there's some parallel journeys here I know personally, and Linus, that when Peter Hola and I meet at this line, we have our little special time where I just fall asleep, but I just get back and hear what's going on. But I think Ram will enjoy it. So I go reach out to him because I could find his email on the list. All right.
All right, gentlemen.
Dennis, I just wanted to add, as we're talking about future agenda, as per last week when we did the breaking boundaries, we'll do a second part of that. And I think we'll do what was suggested on the call. We'll do that in March. And then we'll push the book, the Tuesdays with Maury, to April. And then we might have next book, which I said was a selection from the Africa content books. We'll do that in the month following that. All right. So that's to give you a heads up. That's what I'll send an email outlining that to the group.
Okay.
So you're really giving these fellas 2 books to read in 2 months?
Well, they could read. They should be reading the first one all by now.
The first one
They
is a relatively quick read.
Yes.
Even for somebody like me who's a slow reader. So
Well, for me, who's a slow reader,
You read the audiobook or what?
It is like for me, just like you, Peter. I'm a slow reader, but I am enjoying reading it at my own pace. And it's easy for me. To me, an easy read is better than a fast read. I just like to read.
I sent a chat message to Roger. I don't know if you read it last week, but my uncle, who was sort of my mentor in life, I lost him to ALS. So that book is ringing. Really, it hit me pretty strong. So
that's good. Yeah. That's good. Good choice, Dennis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good night, my brothers.
Okay.
All right, you guys take
Good night, everybody.
Ciao.
Linda, it's really nice to see you, brother.
It was good to be back. It's good to be back. I miss you guys. And Roger, let me just blow your trumpet. I used to real boast like how I boast about all of you guys in terms of the individual strengths that you all have and what you all have achieved and the impact on people's lives. At that time, when Roger was at Carney and stuff like that, it was the advent of computers, because I remember going by Gillette and buying.
You need to speak a little closer.
Yeah, I remember going by Gillette and buying an IBM for $13,000 from my office in those days. It was ridiculous. And when I went in there and they started talking about, I said, "Hey, what happened? I have a friend who, Roger, did you come 15th in the world in those exams, man?"
I don't know what place, but the scholarship thing was an international.
Yeah, I think you came 5th. I actually checked.
Okay.
So that sense of pride I've always had in you guys, I suppose was only dampened by the fact that I did not know where your preferences lie in life. So if you're going to take it to that straight up level and go to the top, or if you had other interests, like how you have an interest in public service and helping people. But at that time, if I were on the platform to, I suppose, blow your trumpets for you all, it was resounding. You were all actually top class examples for me in conversation with all my friends. Tremendous sense of pride.
Linus, you see, boy, you breaking down this thing where we just tell some big men don't cry. Why should DP, one favor I want you to do, man. So, I know you're posting the recording where you posted, but also send me the link so I could download it. Not just that, so then I can put it in the archives.
Okay.
You can send that to me. So
send in the Zoom link.
Yeah, because that way I wouldn't have to
upload it or whatever.
Right.
Okay. Cool. All right.
I'm putting that one in the archives that we have with all the lists.
Good night, gentlemen.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah. All right.
Take care, man.